So it's February 19th, 2026, and this is the Zcash Arborist Call. Our agenda starts with core stack updates with Zcash Foundation, former ECC, which I guess we can update this now, Zingo Labs, Paku, and then research and implementation updates with Kedit, Shielded Labs, and former ECC, and then Shielded Labs again with dynamic fees, and then open announcements and discussion. So what are Arborist Calls? Arborist Calls are biweekly calls where Zcash protocol contributors convene to discuss upgrade timelines and process, protocol R&D efforts, design and implementation of new protocol features, and identify blockers and unresolved issues. The purpose is to make core Zcash development accessible for a wider set of participants and provide more transparency for the community at large. Who can participate? Anyone interested in learning about Zcash protocol development can register at zcasharborist.org. If you want to suggest a topic for discussion or present an in-depth agenda item relevant to the Zcash protocol, please email arboristcall@zfnd.org to request a slot. Other ways to get involved, Zcash Community Grants, ZCG, Zcash R&D Discord, visit the Zcash Community Forum, and then all these links are listed at zcasharborist.org. So let's start with core stack updates. Zcash Foundation with Zebra.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you, Alex. Since the last Arborist call, the exact day of the last Arborist call, we released Zebra 4.1.0. And that release, which was after January, and most of the team was in vacation, but the main improvements were in the Prometheus metrics, the Grafana boards. And we added some of the standard tests for transactions to enter the mempool, which were ported from Zcash. So since then, we removed OpenAPI support in favor of OpenRPC, which is the documentation framework that Salad was using, which is more appropriate for our RPC interface. So we now have an RPC.discover endpoint. All the work in Zebra was merged, and we have pending one PR in Salad, which will be good if someone can review. I paste the link for it in the chat. Okay, so that's that. Then we added another RPC method called getTransactionOut, which was kind of requested by different people using Zebra that were needed that. So we have that now. We added a new state request called AnyChainBlock, which was requested by the Sano team. So that's merged into Zebra as well. We added a policy for AI agents for submitting code. I know other teams are doing the same. We were having a hard time trying to review all the code generated by AI, so we have some more clear rules of what to look before pushing a PR. We fixed a compatibility mismatch between Zcash and Zebra in the getRoute transaction RPC method. We fixed getBlock subsidy RPC to support founder rewards for all blocks. Today we find out we have back there, but initially we were supporting that. Then we have a lot of stuff in progress, but I guess it might be worth mentioning that we have approved our PR for shielded Coinbase. And in order to merge that into Zebra, we need to create a release for Zcash script. There are several things that are stacking for a Zcash script release. So I was wondering if it is okay if we start with that release process soon. And then another thing to mention is that Strat had worked in a Zcash integration test repository, which will allow us to remove all the Python QA stuff we had in Zebra in favor of continuing the work in that new repository. So it should be a PR soon to deprecate that into a Zebra code base. And I think that's pretty much it, all I had.
Thanks, Alfredo. Any questions for Alfredo? Great. So moving on to core stack updates with former ECC on Zcash core libraries, and Zale CLI wallet.
Yeah, the former ECC should be renamed to Zodl now, since
Yep,
that's
we'll do.
since that. Um, yeah, so last couple of weeks, we have been continue work on Zale and a bunch of the back end things related to that. As Alfredo mentioned, my focus the last week and a bit or so has been getting the RPC test framework working in a place where it can be used to test any of the Z3 stack. And we're now at a point where that can emerge. We have RPC tests that actually pass, as in like a status line that actually passes. A bunch that don't, but they're the ones that will have to be migrated over time. But it means that anyone who is contributing to Zale going forward, you can test your additions by writing new RPC tests over in that repo, and that stuff will then run can run against it. The integration is a little bit janky at the moment in terms of like you have to go write the test, merge that, and then the merge test to work. I've got a task open to figure out a way to make it easier to use branches and that, but that's refinements we can work on over time. The main logic is working. We've also been making a bunch of changes in the core libraries for a couple of different bugs being fixed in the like in the incremental tree and shard tree handling, fixing some sort of long-standing weird edge case bugs. So Chris sorted those out recently. We have a bunch of review going on for the various third-party PRs that have been opened for on Zale. Thank you for those. Keep them coming. And trying to think what else has come up. Oh yeah, and then as far as the zip side of things go, we've been having some more conversations around the extensible transaction format. There were some conversations with Kedit earlier, as well as in the zip sync and some R&D meetings, and we've been refining and sort of figuring out some of the edge cases to the approach, particularly where you potentially have multiple bundles that could need to affect the same global state. The obvious example being an Orchard bundle pre-ZSA and an Orchard ZSA bundle post-ZSA. So figuring out like how the format would need to address and like handle those kinds of cases, particularly for wallets that understand the current set of bundles, and then if a new bundle gets added that in theory would update, affect existing state, how does that process work? So we're working through the usual zip updating motions there to refining motions there to make sure that the specs are solid. All right, is there anything else I'm forgetting, Derima? Oh yes, we also in the R&D meeting discussed Dev's shielded voting protocol thoughts. So there's some discussions happening in terms of approaches to enable using existing wallets to generate voting proposals without needing to extract the seed phrase. So there's ongoing discussions there. That stuff happens at the R&D meetings. So if anyone here is interested in those and wants to attend and contribute, ping myself or basically anyone else in the Zcash R&D Discord, and we can get you an invite to those meetings.
Great. Thank you, Strad. Any questions for Strad? Okay, let's move on. So core stack updates with Zingo Labs on Zano. Is somebody here from Zingo?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And we haven't released yet, but we are at the point where it's just housekeeping left. Like all of the features are landed. It's just a matter of like figuring out changelog policy, where we're pretty nailed down on changelog policies and stuff, but it's just housekeeping left. So expect a Zyno release very soon.
Great. Thank you, Hazel. Any questions for Hazel? Okay, next. Zcash D deprecation updates with Paku, ZF, Single Labs, and former ECC.
All right. There's always a little bit of overlap here. So to add to what
Swaddle.
Hazel had to say, yeah. To add to what, yeah, sorry about that. So subtle. To add to what Hazel had to say, we are in the process of updating the zebra crates in Zano, and I went through the process this time. This usually Arlo or Hazel would do it, so I want to do it this time to learn about it and like do a little bit of documentation testing and add more docs, so anyone in the team can actually do it, because it's pretty like housekeeping is boring, as we all know. So I wanted that to be a rotating task, so there's no appointee of these kind of things, and everyone can have fun and everyone can do like the boring stuff now and then. We have some tests failing, just one workflow that we're trying to find if it is a flaky test or not. And then when we find out, that we will release Zeno with supporting the Zebra 4.10. Yeah, nothing break. Everything went pretty smoothly. I expected like more like bigger bangs, but it wasn't the case. I'm pretty happy about it. What else? I've been grooming the contributors board. I will write a little bit more about it on tomorrow's update for Zcash deprecation updates, as every Friday. But we have received a lot of contributions, as Strat said, and I'm like just searching the DAG and the GitHub issues and try to figure what are other like low-hanging fruit that community contributors can work on, and tag them and put them on the board. So keep on coming, as Strat said. Thank you so much for the contributions. And yes, and I think that's pretty much it for this section of the call.
Any questions for Paku? Awesome. Thanks, Paku. Next. Zcash deprecation updates with Kedit on ZSAs. Is anybody from Kedit here today? Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, move on. If somebody comes, we'll slot them back in. So research and implementation updates with Shielded Labs on the network sustainability mechanism.
Yeah, so the Shielded Labs team met in person last week in Mexico City. We did some planning sessions focused on 2026 road mapping and organizational strategy. So this week's updates on the NSM, on Crosslink, dynamic fees are going to be lighter than usual. We have one update for the NSM. On the engineering side, we've addressed feedback and updated the ZIP 234 and ZIP 235 implementation PRs again. Judo's pushed some additional changes since the last call, and now we're just waiting for those updates to be reviewed and merged into Zebra. He also has reached out and plans to follow up with Conrado to discuss a few open questions about the implementation.
Great. Questions for Jason? Great. Before we go on, Dara, Emma, do you want to say, or I can read this out if that would help. So Emma typed in the zip sync meeting on Tuesday. We worked out in principle, Modelo, some details how to maintain indistinguishability of Orchard v6 transactions between wallets that understand ZSAs and those that don't. Even if ZSAs are deployed in a later upgrade than TX v6, no plaintext lead byte 0 by 03. This also has the important advantage that ZEC-only wallets will understand ZEC notes sent to them in custom asset-supporting bundles, which would otherwise have been a clear obstacle to adoption. Thank you for posting that there, Emma. So research and implementation updates, Shield Labs, and Zottle, Crosslink trailing finality layer.
Hey all, apologies for being in a loud environment. So the update from the Shielded Lab side is that last week we did an in-person, and so that was pretty awesome I think it was the first time our current team had all met each other. Lots of collaboration. For Crosslink specifically, a lot of our conversation was about this notion we have this year to sort of go from where we've been with starting testnets for each milestone. We want to extend that notion to begin to develop like production-ready feature net testnets. However, initially, what we're going to do is they'll be long-running, but we are still going to skip the complexity of like in-protocol upgrades initially. So we'll have what we call season testnets. Each milestone, we will start a new network, but we will also have a way to migrate your testnet CPAs from previous iterations to newer ones. And then we also want to use a donation we've received from Buterin to see if we can add like rewards or incentives that match the actual design of Crosslink itself. And so we're aiming for that. Yeah. And so the first iteration is going to be minimum viable product, and we'll see how that goes and learn from it. So aside from that, we have started road mapping for the rest of the year. I'm still working on that. I'm likely going to want to reach out to like people here or across other orgs for feedback on the process, like, you know, as we approach a more mature feature, assuming that there is clear widespread consensus to activate it. Okay, and then what does that look like? What are the steps after that? Yeah, so the main focus for me right now is clarifying that roadmap, and then we'll post about that soon, and we'll likely be incorporating feedback on the roadmap. And meanwhile, the devs are working towards setting up that first seasonal long-running testnet. And there's there's many more things we plan to do this year. So one example is to start regularly showing up to the R&D meetings and getting wider review and discussion around Crosslink design decisions. And anything else to point out there? I think that's it for my update.
Any questions for Nate? Thank you, Nate. And then Shielded Labs on. Oh,
actually, Dara Emma has audio problems, but has reached out with like feedback from the first audit. So yes, we're incorporating that. One thing Z was confused by is that there are already in the work of the TFL book that Dara Emma, Strad, and I contributed to previously. It's already accounted for and worked through some things that were covered in the audit, this first game theoretic audit. And the rationale for how we got there is kind of a mix of things, but the general overarching story is that we wanted to strip things down and then sort of get a review of like a really simplified thing that is feature complete, and then use that as like a stepping stone to reintroduce complexity with like more assurance and review that each piece is helpful. That's sort of the big picture story.
Great, thanks, Nate.
Anyway, yeah, and we definitely appreciate Dara's scrutiny and feedback, and hope to see more from her and others.
Great. Next slide, please. So Shielded Labs on dynamic fees.
There's no update this week for dynamic fees. Mark will be back in 2 weeks to provide an update.
Great, thanks. So open announcements. If you have some news or an announcement you'd like to share, please raise your hand. Going once. Okay. Open discussion. If there's a topic you'd like to raise for open discussion, please raise your hand. Alfredo.
Yeah, so to make a Zcash script release, I was wondering maybe with the Strat, if you think it's okay to do so, if we can kick off that, or how do you see it? I know we had to do 2 versions release. I think Corrado mentioned it in one of the comments.
Yeah. So the problem there is that because a 0.5 release was cut, the main branch's version is 0.5. So we shouldn't cut a 0.4 release directly from main, because that would mean that the version history in that repo goes backwards, which makes things just annoying from when you're dealing in the future with like if you're ever trying to do debugging of earlier states, and like bisecting histories, having something where the versions aren't like monotonically increasing just makes things really frustrating to deal with. So if we want that to go out in the 0.4, then it should be backported onto the 0.4 release, and then release from there, then merge that forward into main.
What if we go with 0.5?
So again, this gets to the problem of like 0.4 and 0.5 are currently identical. Modulo, I think, one other little thing because of the mistake where 0.5 was cut as 0.5. And the problem is that currently the entire stack currently depends on 0.4. So those changes cannot be used in the current stack. Now, that being said, so essentially what it gets to is every time we do one of these break releases, like Zcash script is quite far down in the stack of dependencies. Like it's below a lot of the Libra Zcash repos. So we cannot roll Zcash script out 0.5 out to people without also rolling Zcash transparent and Zcash keys and a bunch of other crates there. So you would be blocked on that. You wouldn't be able to access Zcash script 0.5 until we do those updates, and then that can get into Zebra. So that's the main reason for it.
Yeah, I think we need to figure out a way to do this. I don't know, it's too painful to go over the whole stack and convince people that they need to upgrade. So I'm not sure how to handle that, but I think it would be good in the future to. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is something we've been dealing with in the Libra Zcash crates for a long time now, and this is why we have developed the process we have for being able to do patch releases and moving non-breaking changes to those wherever possible, so that they don't block on the wider breaking changes, which also quite frequently happen in the main Libra Zcash repo. It unfortunately, GitHub doesn't give you easy tooling to work with this because to work easily with this because when you open a PR by default it will open against main, but that's actually not what you want to do. Once you realize that something can be patch released, you actually want to go and backport it onto the right branch to give it the visibility that it needs. So there's annoyances there. I'll open up to
So for this one, what do you recommend? Do you recommend they make the two versions, or
I think that I think at this point the two things that have been proposed to be included are like relatively small, so it would be very easy for someone to backport them onto 0.4, and then
Mhm.
and then the two just stay in sync for now.
Okay, I
And
I can
then we
start
just do
with
the
that.
0.5 release whenever we get around to actually having something that we need to bring in.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I open an issue or something to get started on that. Thanks.
Arya, I think you were up next.
You are muted.
Yeah, if you're talking, Arya, we can't hear you.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So in that case, I think it would make sense to merge that PR into main with the patched dependencies while we wait for new releases on those other crates. For the NSM PR against Zebra, what's the plan? Are we just going to make sure that it's correct and merge it in its current state, or are we going to want to make changes on that branch to account for the extensible transaction format before it gets into main?
I mean, as long as it's behind if it's behind a compilation build flag, then it doesn't really matter. That's Yeah, we don't want we wouldn't want it to get into main like directly without any compilation flags. But if it's behind a compilation flag, then we can change it whenever. Because I don't think anything behind a compilation flag needs to have the same kind of like breaking versus non-breaking considerances there. We can be a little bit more tolerant of like breakage for that in development stuff in terms of like Semver related breakage specifically.
Paku.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, I don't know if it's the right place to bring it up. Today at Lightline Working Group, earlier in the day, we had a nice discussion about the memo bundles zip and motivations for it to be included in the new 7. I know that we are still waiting for feedback, and I don't know if there's any polling open yet, but I just want to bring up that we have people trying to develop an application called Zcat, for example, that will desperately need a memo bundles to actually be a secure messenger. And these people are they're not trying to build the next signal or anything like that. They want to really focus on specific kind of messaging for areas that are subject to like difficult regimes, and that they need all the help they can get in terms of like secure and private messaging, even though it's not like kind of like IM or a fast kind of chatting, but just like very secure asynchronous messaging. And I also wanted to chime in and mention a few ideas that I had for this feature, and I don't know if anyone else wants to discuss that.
Jason.
Yeah, I saw Dara Emma's comment about discussing Dev's shielded voting protocol in the most recent R&D meeting. I'm going to meet with Dev tomorrow to demo it and run through a test vote. I'm curious if you had any feedback for him on the voting protocol. Like, was there any talk about testing the protocol or auditing the code? My opinion is, I think if we're going to use this in production, then we should parallel test it alongside Han's voting system, and then it should also be subject to an audit. And then my other question is there any plan for Zottle Wallet to integrate it?
From the testing and feedback side of things, the feedback we were giving was at the level of there isn't a full spec yet, or there isn't a spec at the degree that we'd be happy with. So we were giving feedback on the overall design, and like so, there's already been some sort of like architectural changes suggested and various improvements that I think Dev is then planning on going back and making. So the current state of it is not the state that I expect it will end up being in. But yeah, they are moving pretty quickly. So we'll see what happens there. Some of the feedback that we gave was from the perspective of like what would be necessary to enable it to be deployed in something like Zottle. I can't give commitments one way or the other because I'm not the product manager. But from an engineering perspective, I was giving feedback that would enable that to be possible.
Okay.
Other topics for open discussion? I know Dara Emma has
mentioned that the. Sorry, I meant to put a hand up. I want to mention that the NU7 sentiment polling vote closes tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. If you're on Zcat, please vote. And the coin holder vote is open and various other ones as well. So participate where you're eligible to do so, please. And I wanted to note that Dara Emma had mentioned in the chat about discussing AI. I think maybe we should wait for a future meeting when Dara Emma is able to participate fully in that conversation. We can get out on an agenda, but definitely something that would be good to discuss in this group, I think. So anything else for today for open discussion? Great. So next Arborist call will be March 5th at 1500 UTC. And thank you for participating and attending. Appreciate it. Oh,
thanks,
excuse
Alex.
me.
Thanks,
Wait,
everyone.
sorry. We had one other thing. Arya, did you have something quick you needed to say?
Nope, sorry.
Okay. Thanks, all. Take it easy.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a
Bye.
good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.